Any of you a fan of the Pee Wee Herman movies? I have a point here. There's one in which Pee Wee Herman takes a bad fall on his bike and gets up, dusts himself off, and says, "I meant to do that." Now you know where I'm going, don't you? Because I just discovered it myself. The president is saying, "I meant to do this." The president is saying in this trade war, whatever you want to call it, that he is sending a signal, on the one hand, to send a message that we're not going to put up with countries that treat our products unfairly or tax them unfairly or make them prohibitable to even remotely get their hands on in those countries. But there's another school of thought here, the Pee Wee argument, that this distracts from other things you might be wanting to talk about, like Hope Hicks leaving, like all the Jeff Sessions problems, all that. To Bustle, Senior Director of Research, Jessica Tarlov, who cleverly buys a lot of this, Connell, McShane as well, and Rosecliff Capital founder Mike Murphy. Mike, what do you think of that argument that the president has succeeded in getting us talking about this and not so much that other stuff? I'd hasten to warn him that the other networks are more than covering that other stuff, but your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think this is something he's wanted to get out for a long time, Neil. I don't think it's a distraction. You know, we're not talking about...
And he's done it before.
He's
with
done it
solar
before.
panels.
Yep. So I think this is something he's wanted out, and I think his message is kind of... The way he delivered the message maybe wasn't the most effective way, but I think the message being...
Here's not the most effective. Trade wars are good and easy to win. He tweeted that.
Yes.
Do you agree?
I would have worded that differently, slightly differently.
Okay.
But I think the point being that if you're taxing us 50%, our products at 50% in your country, we're going to tax your products at 50% coming into this country.
But he didn't say that.
He didn't, but I think that's the underlying message.
Understood.
And if that is, I have no problem with it.
Well, it kind of brings up a lot. The whole trade wars are good and easy to win. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, certainly not in the 1930s, right? Neil was a cupboard porter during the Smoot-Hawley days.
Yes, don't get me going.
Don't get him started on Smoot or Hawley now. But
Hoover never returned my calls.
But this idea, that's right. You
did we even have phones?
I remember that story about how Cavuto doesn't want to interview Hoover. Now, anyway, so this whole idea of what comes next is still a legitimate point. I think that's kind of what Mike is getting at, and that gets us to China, right? Because the president's talked about in numerous speeches, Davos was one, State of the Union speech was another, about the intellectual property punishments that are coming for China. So after he has gone down the route that he's gone down here, which is the most aggressive of the options that were presented to him, presuming that he goes through with it, the 25 and 10 that Wilbur Ross has said to have presented to him, how punitive, how aggressive will he be with China, and then what will their response be on the intellectual property issue,
which Canada.
I know. On this issue, I'm just saying the next trade event could be a bigger trade event, and that's the Chinese event.
All right, it'd be one thing to go after the Chinese, but I think Americans like Canada.
It's not the first time with Canada.
You're absolutely right.
The lumber, he was...
So actually, you're okay with this, bottom line?
Well, if it's not fair, then making it fair, I'm fine with. Taking advantage of others because we're bigger, I'm not okay with. I think that sets off a trade war. But if we're being taken advantage of and now we're going to level the playing field, if that is the case, I'm fine with it.
You know, well, that's an interesting argument because in Democratic and Republican administrations, they've all had tariffs of one sort or another or come back at, you know, and to the defense of an industry that they felt was unfairly treated here. But it does get a lot of attention in this case because it reminds people that a lot of these countries do have these kind of policies in effect. How should it be handled?
Well, I agree with Mike that it shouldn't be handled in the exact phraseology that he's using on Twitter. And I do feel bad for everyone out there who has to be like the Trump whisperer. And they have to translate his tweets because it would be very easy to have tweeted what you just said. You know, if they're taking 50%, we should get a 50% bump or whatever, however that works out.
But even if he said it that way, Jessica, you would still be upset with him, right? Because even though...
I'm a Democrat, so I'm upset.
But in seriousness, if Mike is right that we are at a disadvantage abroad, and he's right to say good luck finding an American car in Japan or China, whatever, then how do you rectify that without ticking people off?
I don't think that you can. I think that fundamentally we're never going to meet at parity here, and there's not going to be agreement across both sides. But as you said, you know, George Bush tried to do this, Obama tried to do this. There was significant pushback. International organizations that didn't like it, and that's going to happen. But this is a campaign promise. So Donald Trump is going back to what got him elected here, and he's saying this is America first. There are people arguing that it isn't because it's going to raise costs for American consumers. But I just want to add, I think that both things are at play here. What you said about the distraction game and the fact that he actually wanted to do this. So he's probably been waiting until an opportune time. And I would add to the Hope Hicks, Jeff Sessions issue.
We're making it too
NRA
clever by
issue.
half, though.
Yeah.
There's a strategy to this.
I don't think there's any strategy to
And I'm not insulting. I'm just saying, you know, timing is everything, and it's not great timing, but it.
No, but on this issue in particular, I mean, one of the criticisms of this president is that you can kind of change his mind depending on what the time of day is, and this whole idea that the last person who spoke to him is the person he believes. That's not true on trade. I mean, it never has been true on trade. I mean, this is something he actually believes. You go back, actually, it shows you what kind of time I have in my hands, but I watched his 1988 interview with Oprah this morning a little bit, and then he was talking about Japan. Now he's talking about China, but it's
you are now duller than I am.
I know.
And that's a leap of
pretty good interview. I was trying to preview the next presidential race, but he's talking about Japan. He says, I'd make our allies pay for their fair share. And then he talks about Japan. He goes, they come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, which tells you when the interview was done, and they knock the hell out of our company. So he's been talking about this forever.
No, you're right about that.
He believes this.
You know, and Mike, one of the things he has always said over the years is we are always defensive on trade when it comes to the Chinese, because they own so much of our debt, don't rattle their cage and all that. And he says we are always playing like we don't have the edge and the upper hand. And he argues that we do. He has often said, for example, about China, that they need us a lot more than we need them. Now, I don't know where you stand on that particular issue, but he's going on offense. Now, if this is going to be the tone, as a market guy, whatever your personal thoughts that he's right to do what he's doing, are you worried for the markets?
I'm not. I think simply this is a reaction to some statements that were made. But overall, when you look at the markets, you know, 2 weeks ago, we're talking about the economy overheating, interest rates going up. Therefore, we're going to get a sell-off in the market.
So you're not worried about more products, goods, and services that could be targeted, a widening of this?
Again, as long as this is fair, I don't think there's a massive reaction to it. I think it blows over, and I think the U.S. economy continues its strength.
So many Republicans are upset. If so many business groups are upset, they're obviously looking at their own interests, so they're worried, right?
I think they're definitely looking at their own interests. Republicans are upset, yet Democrats aren't. So if that's obviously them looking out for their own interests. I think the interests of
Jessica was kind of upset, right?
She was.
There are a few Democrats who are upset about it, but I think it's oftentimes with Trump, it's more the style than it is the substance of what's going on. And as we know from the art of the deal, everything is just an opening offer, right? Like, I want $25 billion for my border wall. It probably wouldn't end up being $25 billion, and it aggravates everyone when he says that.
Oh, so this is a negotiating strategy.
Maybe it is. Listen, I watched the Soup interview. I don't know where we're going with that. It could say a 25
but again,
and 10.
It could be different this time. It could be different this time because this issue is different for him. Trade is different.
But it could be. How many times have we said it's going to be different, and it's always just Trump?
Those are different.
I didn't use that negotiating strategy. I just found out, you know, other anchors here are paid.
No way.
Ticks me off. All right, guys, thank you very, very much.